What's up guys, Bosch here once again with another Walking Dead review. This week we got to see episode 12, it was called Clear, and I was a little confused as to why this episode was called Clear, and it does get explained somewhat in the episode, and I'll do my best to A, explain it, and B, give my perspective on what it means, but there's a little bit to get to before we get to that. Spoiler alert, obviously, just before we go any further, just if you haven't seen the episode, you're gonna get spoiled if you watch this. But anyway, let's move on. Well, you know, it was a good episode. It wasn't quite what I was expecting. It was pretty hyped by a lot of the cast members on Twitter, and a lot of obviously their official Twitter was hyping it, and a few other Twitter pages were, you know, saying, you know, this is going to be a really good episode. It's going to be the best episode of the season. And I don't think it was the best episode of the season. I think it was, again, an episode we needed to have before it starts to get really good. And it was, again, a lot of information, not too much action. It was a little less, it was a bit more, you know, high profile than last week. But at the same time, it was just sort of a deluge of information that we need to have just so that we can be prepared for the next, I think there's 4 episodes left, I think. 9, 10, 11, 12, yeah, 4 episodes left. Sorry, my math is awful. So yeah, basically Michonne, Rick, and Carl are going on that run that they mentioned last week, and you know, they do come across a hitchhiker along the way. Not too much of a big deal, but they do just let him go. They don't even stop and try and talk to him. They just go, nah, not even gonna stop. And Carl has this look on his face like maybe we should have stopped. But, you know, that's the way the world is now. You know, you can't trust anybody, especially someone on the side of the road. I mean, the way I think about it is, like, honestly, how many hitchhikers do you pick up, like, normally? Let alone, you know, someone in a zombie apocalypse who, you know, it could be anybody. So, the same rules apply, basically. You know, I'd never pick up a hitchhiker in normal circumstances. But, you know, anyway. So they're going on this run to Rick's old hometown, and I believe it's called King County. I'm not sure if it's the same in the comics or not, but yeah, they're going back to this thing to get some guns, because they need guns, obviously, because the governor's kind of trying to kill them. And they go to the police station that Rick used to work for. You know, he used to work there, and the place has been just utterly cleaned out. Like, there's literally 1 bullet left, and Michonne gives it to Rick and says, look, it was a bullet for the python too, which I thought was quite, you know, it showed that, you know, for me, that was kind of like a symbol of hope. You know, there's always going to be some hope there for them. So that was pretty cool. And Rick decides that they're going to search local businesses because he did sign permits for a few weapons, and I mean, it's not, you know, an armada by any means, but you know, anything's going to help. And they go out into the street and they start seeing some very strange occurrences, and there's a whole lot of traps, as we saw in the preview from last week, and just a whole lot of, you know, just a crazy setup, basically. You know, someone's here and someone's here to stay, and Michonne tries to point that out, and Rick says, look, they're probably not looking for what we're looking for, and we'll just get in and get out. And that's when things start going wrong. A mystery man from the rooftop starts firing on them and says, you know, or he doesn't start firing, he says, put your hands up, leave your guns and your shoes, which I thought was weird, and leave, you know, get out of here. And Rick obviously is not going to do that. And a bit of a gunfight ensues, and Carl ends up shooting the guy, but he has body armor on. And as per my prediction, it turned out to be Morgan. And I thought that was pretty cool. You know, we get to see what happened to Morgan, and it's really quite a sad story. I mean, Morgan does try and attack Rick and doesn't really know who Rick is. He's kind of gone a little bit mental, and you know, his mental capacity is kind of failing him a little bit. And yeah, it's actually pretty sad, you know. Morgan tells Rick about what happened to Dwayne, because on the wall there's in big red letters, there's Dwayne turned. And basically Morgan was checking a cellar for food, because it always comes back to having food. And when Morgan came back, his old wife was standing right in front of Dwayne, and Dwayne had his gun, you know, pointed at her, but he could not pull the trigger. And that's a little bit of a throwback to, you know, season 1 when Morgan was trying to kill her then, and he couldn't pull the trigger, and, you know, he says, like, look, he couldn't do it either, and before he knew it, she was all over him. She was just, you know, biting him and just ripping flesh apart, and he was like, you know, I had to do it. I took the shot and finally did it, and, you know, that's basically what screwed him up. And he said, you know, I was selfish. I should have done it when you gave me the gun originally. And he's right. You know, he should have taken the shot originally because, you know, maybe Dwayne would still be alive. And that was a big moment for me. I thought that was, you know, quite a sad story, and just shows how far he has fallen, you know, since he met Rick all the way. You know, it was almost a year ago in Showtime now, so it's pretty crazy. It's pretty you know, I keep using the word sad. You know, it's all it is. It's very sad. And, you know, Rick tries to, you know, make him join them, you know, join them at the prison, help them fight the governor, and he says, look, your people, your son, you're all going to get eaten or ripped apart by bullets. I can't go through that again. I can't see that again. It's just too much for me. So, and here's where, this is what stuck with me. One of two things that stuck with me. Number one was this conversation where he said, I didn't die today. I take that as a sign that I have to clear. And that's the name of the episode, Clear. And at first I didn't know what he meant by this. I was pretty confused. But later on in the episode we do see him clearing the bodies of the walkers from the traps. And I don't know whether that's some kind of, you know, grand plan to clear the town of walkers so that there's none there anymore, or I don't know, but he feels as though he needs to be there. That's where his current calling is. That's his purpose in the world at the moment, and he needs to clear. And that's what he has to do. You know, that's how I perceive that to be. You know, that's his purpose in the world at this point in time. And the other thing that resonated with me, number two, was just before Morgan woke up from, you know, he got shot and knocked out, Rick sat down next to him and said, I'm sorry that this happened to you. And that stuck with me because that's a throwback to season 1 again, when the first walker Rick came up, you know, saw basically after leaving the hospital, was the one that was cut off at the, you know, at the legs or whatever, and it was crawling along the ground, and he went up to it and said, look, I'm sorry this happened to you, and put her out of her misery. So they're doing a lot of like season 1 sort of throwbacks at the moment, which is kind of cool. It's good to know that, you know, Rick still has some sense about him. But anyway, that's my review of the episode. It was pretty good. Not what I was expecting, but, you know, that's not always a bad thing. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys later.